Ethan Caldwell had been hunting for an apartment in Boston for weeks. When he found the small, affordable unit above an antique bookstore, he thought it was perfect, quiet, old, and just far enough from the city noise. The landlord, Mrs. Hargrove, was a frail old woman with cloudy eyes and a strange way of smiling. Too long after she spoke. "The light switch in the bedroom," she said, "sometimes flickers. Don't worry about it." "The wiring's old," Ethan shrugged. He'd lived in worse. By nightfall, he'd unpacked half his boxes and cracked open a beer. The air was cold, thick with dust and something faintly metallic, like old pennies. When he turned off the bedroom light for the first time, he noticed something unsettling. The reflection in the mirror. In the dim moonlight, he could see his bed, his own shape under the blanket. And just behind him, a pale outline, a face smiling. He froze. His pulse thundered. He turned on the light and nothing there. Just the mirror, his bed, and the bare walls. Ethan laughed nervously, muttering to himself, "Get a grip, man. You're just tired." He left the light on that night. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the cracked blinds. Ethan made coffee and noticed something scratched faintly into the wooden bedpost. It hadn't been there before. "Don't turn it off." He ran his finger over the letters and carved deep, shaky, desperate. The words made no sense. Maybe the previous tenant had been insane. Still, that night he couldn't stop staring at the switch. At 2 a.m., after scrolling through his phone, he decided to finally turn it off. The room fell into total darkness. He lay still, listening to the hum of the city outside. The old wood creaked, the pipes groaned, normal apartment sounds. But then he heard something else, breathing soft, close, right beside him. He opened his eyes. The mirror across from the bed reflected faint moonlight again, and in that faint light he saw her. A woman standing over him, hair hanging long and black, her mouth stretched too wide, her eyes hollow, and she was smiling. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He fumbled for the switch and the click echoed. The light snapped on. The room was empty, but on the pillow next to him the sheet was indented, as though someone had been lying there moments ago. The next morning, Ethan didn't want to move. The memory of that smile, wide, frozen, unnatural, haunted him. Every time he blinked, he saw her pale face hovering in the dark. The indentation on the pillow was still there when sunlight hit his bed. He touched it, half expecting it to be warm, cold, completely cold. He forced himself to laugh. "I need sleep," he muttered, trying to shake the fear. Just a nightmare. Still, he couldn't ignore what he'd seen. He threw on a hoodie and went downstairs to the antique bookstore below. The air smelled like paper and dust. The owner, an old man named Walter, sat behind the counter surrounded by yellowed books and ticking clocks. "You live upstairs now?" Walter asked without looking up. "Yeah, moved in yesterday," Ethan said. Do you know anything about the last tenant?" The old man paused, then adjusted his glasses. "You shouldn't ask about her," he said quietly. "The young woman who lived there before, she didn't last long." Ethan frowned. "Didn't last long?" Walter sighed. "She moved out suddenly, or at least that's what the landlord told me. But I heard screaming one night. The police came. Then nothing." A chill spread through Ethan's chest. "Did they find her?" "No," Walter said. "Only her diary." That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. He found himself staring into the mirror again. The same mirror that had reflected the smile. The glass was slightly warped, old enough to ripple faintly like water. He remembered the carved words on the bedpost. "Don't turn it off." So he left the light on again. Hours passed. He drifted in and out of shallow sleep until the bulb above began to flicker. A slow, rhythmic pulse of dim light. Flicker. Darkness. Flicker. In one of those flashes, he saw her again standing inside the mirror. Her body didn't move, but her smile widened, lips stretching until they seemed to tear. Ethan scrambled from the bed, heart pounding. He grabbed his phone and pointed, the flashlight toward the glass. Nothing, just his reflection. He stared at the reflection carefully then noticed something wrong. The him in the mirror wasn't holding a phone. Ethan's blood froze. The reflection smiled. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. The screen shattered, leaving him in silence except for the faint buzz of the dying bulb. He rushed to the switch and turned the light off. then instantly regretted it. The darkness swallowed him whole. The breathing returned, closer this time. "Ethan," a voice whispered. It sounded female, soft, like a breath against his ear. He turned on the light again. Empty. He stepped toward the mirror slowly, noticing a small crack running across the surface that hadn't been there before. He touched it and felt something wet. It wasn't dust. It was warm, sticky, like blood. He stumbled back, wiping his finger on his jeans, heart hammering. The crack on the mirror deepened on its own, crawling upward like a vein. A faint giggle echoed through the room, faint but unmistakable. That's when Ethan grabbed his coat and bolted out the door. He ran down the stairs out into the street and didn't stop until he reached a 24-hour diner 2 blocks away. His hands shook as he sipped black coffee, staring at the reflection in the window glass. For a second, in the reflection, she was sitting beside him, still smiling. He blinked, and she was gone. When he returned to the apartment at sunrise, exhaustion weighed on him like concrete. He told himself he'd pack and leave, but curiosity clawed at him. He needed to know what happened to the previous tenant. He searched the apartment, checking behind furniture, inside drawers, beneath the mattress. Nothing. Then he noticed loose floorboards under the bed. He pried one open. A small leather-bound notebook was wedged inside. The first page read, "If you see her smile, never look away." Ethan's hand trembled as he flipped through the pages. Drawings of a woman's face, sketches of her eyes and teeth, notes about the mirror, and frantic writing toward the end. "She's not in the reflection anymore. She's behind me." The last page was blank except for a single fingerprint, smeared red. Ethan heard a sound then, a faint click. The light had turned off on its own, and from the darkness behind him came a whisper, soft and sweet. "You looked away." Ethan didn't remember falling asleep. He only remembered the whisper, that soft, mocking voice that echoed through the room. And then nothing. When he woke up, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The morning light spilled through the blinds, but it didn't bring warmth. The air was cold, dry, and still, the kind of silence that made you think something was waiting to be heard. His phone lay shattered on the floor next to the diary he'd found. He picked it up, flipping to the last written page again. "She's not in the reflection anymore. She's behind me." Ethan's chest tightened. The words looked fresher now, as if the ink hadn't dried. He glanced at the mirror. It looked normal, cracked but empty. Still, he could swear he heard a faint scratching sound coming from somewhere, behind the wall. Scratch, scratch, tap, tap. He pressed his ear against the plaster. The noise stopped. Then came a low hum, a woman's hum, like an eerie lullaby. The sound drifted along the walls as if the building itself was breathing. He stepped back, his pulse quickening. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. Then tap, 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 3 knocks, slow and deliberate, from inside the wall. Hours later, Ethan went downstairs to the bookstore again. Walter was rearranging books near the counter when he entered. "Walter," Ethan said, voice trembling. "What happened to that girl? The one who lived here before me?" The old man looked up sharply. "You found her diary, didn't you?" Ethan nodded. Walter sighed heavily. "She was a student. Name was Lila. She rented that same apartment about a year ago. Started coming down here every day, pale as a ghost. Said she was seeing things. Faces in mirrors. Hands reaching from shadows. I told her to move out. What happened to her?" Ethan pressed. "She tried," Walter said quietly. "But she disappeared before she ever left. Police said she packed her bags, but the bed was still warm when they searched the place. Nobody's seen her since." Ethan's blood ran cold. He hesitated. "Do you think she, died there?" Walter met his eyes. "I think she never left." That night, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment was breathing. Every time he exhaled, he heard a faint echo, like another breath matching his. He taped over the mirror with newspaper, but even then, he could feel her presence. He left the lights on. Every bulb, every lamp. The room glowed like a hospital ward, white and sterile. He thought that would help. It didn't. Around 3 a.m., the lights flickered. One by one, they went out. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness swallowed the room. He reached for the switch, but his hand froze halfway. Something moved in the corner, a shadow darker than the dark around it. It slithered along the wall, stretching like wet ink. A whisper drifted out of it. "Ethan, I'm still here." The voice was behind the wall again, moving slowly, crawling closer. He could hear fingernails dragging behind the plaster, tracing his movements. His breath quickened. Then suddenly the wall cracked. A long, jagged split tore through the paint, running down from the ceiling to the floor. From that crack, a pale eye blinked open. Ethan screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The wall watched him. The eye rolled, focusing on him. Human but wrong, glassy, lifeless. Then a second eye appeared beside it. Then the faint outline of a smile pressing through the wallpaper from underneath. She was inside the wall. Ethan bolted for the door. He yanked the handle, locked. He didn't remember locking it. His fingers shook as he turned it again and again, but it wouldn't move. The whispering grew louder now, echoing from every direction. "You saw me. You shouldn't have turned it off." The wallpaper began to bubble and stretch as if something beneath it was trying to push through. Hands pressed out from underneath. 5 long fingers, nails sharp and blackened. The wall split again, tearing open like skin. Her face emerged, and the same twisted smile, too wide, too human to be human. She was half in the wall, half out. Her head tilted unnaturally sideways as she reached for him. Ethan screamed and grabbed the broken lamp, swinging it. Sparks flew. The bulb burst. And for a second, the entire apartment flashed bright white. When the light faded, the wall was whole again. No cracks, no eyes, no woman, just silence. He fell to his knees, gasping, trembling. He didn't know how long he sat there, clutching the shattered lamp base. But as the dawn light crept in through the window, something new appeared on the wall. Faint at first, then darker. Words. Written in long, dripping strokes. "Thank you for letting me out." Ethan didn't sleep after that. He couldn't. The apartment felt different now. Lighter, emptier. But somehow he knew she was still near. Outside, he heard Walter's store opening. Somewhere in the walls, a single whisper echoed faintly, almost sweetly, as if from far away. "Don't forget to turn off the lights." Ethan left the apartment before the sun was even up. He didn't pack. Didn't look back. He just grabbed his coat, stuffed the diary into his pocket, and walked until the building was out of sight. Every window he passed felt like an eye. Every dark reflection seemed to smirk at him. He told himself he was free. That once he crossed the street, once he left that cursed building, she couldn't follow. But when he reached the end of the block, a chill swept through the morning air. A streetlight above him flickered twice and then died. And in the darkened glass of a parked car beside him, she was smiling. Ethan's heart skipped. He turned, had no one there. But when he looked back, her reflection was gone. He started walking faster, muttering to himself, "You're just tired. It's your mind playing tricks." He stopped at a cafe on Tremont Street, hoping caffeine and people would ground him back to reality. The waitress noticed his trembling hands. "Rough night?" she asked gently. He forced a smile. "Yeah, just didn't sleep." She nodded sympathetically and walked away, but when Ethan looked up to thank her, she was standing completely still. Staring at him, her smile was wrong, too wide. He blinked, and suddenly she was normal again, pouring coffee. But the reflection in the window behind her still smiled. He left the cafe without finishing his drink. The world outside looked off balance, too bright, too still. People walked past, but none of them met his eyes. He could feel her watching him through glass, from windows, from mirrors, even from puddles left by last night's rain. At one point, he crossed a store window filled with mannequins. Every one of them had a faint smile painted across its face. Except one. One mannequin had no paint at all, just an empty mouth that seemed carved open. As he passed, the reflection of that same mannequin turned its head to follow him. Ethan stumbled backward into the street, nearly getting hit by a cab. The driver leaned out and shouted something obscene, but Ethan didn't care. He ran. He didn't stop running until he reached a small motel on the outskirts of town, the Pines Inn. A flickering neon sign buzzed overhead like a swarm of flies. He paid in cash, took the key, and locked himself in room 12. He shoved a towel under the door crack and turned on every light. The buzzing from the ceiling fixtures was deafening but comforting. For the first time in days, he felt safe. Then he looked into the bathroom mirror. The light above it flickered once, and her reflection smiled back at him. He smashed the mirror with his fist, shards flying across the sink. Blood streaked his knuckles, but he didn't care. He fell to his knees, shaking. "Leave me alone," he screamed. A soft voice whispered from the shards on the floor. "Why would I leave? You brought me here." The lights flickered. The bulbs above him began to dim, one after another. He scrambled for his phone, turned on the flashlight, but the beam caught something horrifying. On the motel wall, faint words were appearing, written in dripping red lines. "You turned off the light that night. Ethan, now it's your turn." The air grew heavy, suffocating. He backed away toward the bed, clutching his bleeding hand. The shadows in the corners of the room stretched toward him, long and finger-like. The smell of iron filled the air. He pointed the flashlight toward the wall again, and there she was, half submerged in shadow, half in the light, her face twisted and smiling. Her head tilted as if curious. She spoke in that same whisper. "You freed me. Don't you remember?" Ethan's voice cracked. "What are you?" Her grin widened. "I was forgotten." "You looked at me. You believed I was there. That's all I needed." He stepped back. No, you're not real." Her laughter echoed like glass breaking. "Not real? Then why do you bleed when I smile?" The room pulsed with light. On, off, on again, each flash revealing her closer. At the foot of the bed. Then beside him. Then right in front of his face. He could feel the cold air radiating from her, smell the damp rot of her skin. Her smile trembled, almost tender, as she whispered, "Do you know what's worse than being unseen, Ethan?" He didn't answer. Her grin widened to the point of tearing. Being remembered, the lights exploded. Total darkness, Ethan screamed, but the sound was cut off mid-breath. When the morning sun rose, the motel room was empty. The bed was unmade, the mirror shattered, and on the wall, written in blood, were 5 simple words. She smiled after the lights. The motel manager found the room hours later. He called the police, shaking, insisting he'd heard someone laughing before dawn. But when they checked the security cameras, there was no one entering or leaving the room all night. Only one thing seemed out of place. Every reflective surface, the mirror, the window, even the TV screen, and had faint fingerprints, small, delicate, and shaped like a woman's hand. Later that evening, as the sun went down, the motel manager stood outside room 12 holding the broken key. He turned off the hallway lights before locking up, and from inside the dark room came a soft, distant sound and a woman's gentle giggle, then silence. And if anyone had been close enough to the window to look in, they might have seen it, just for a second, a reflection in the glass. A woman smiling. The news called it the Motel 12 incident. No one could explain what happened to Ethan Caldwell. The police found no body, only blood on the wall and a smile drawn across the cracked mirror with someone's fingertip. By the end of the week, the motel closed for renovations. But the room stayed sealed. No cleaners entered, no guests asked. Yet at night, locals swore the lights in room 12 flickered on by themselves. 6 months later, Clara Rogers, a young journalist for a Boston podcast that specialized in urban legends, heard the story. She thought it was perfect material for her Halloween episode, The Smiling Woman of Tremont Street. She drove to the old neighborhood, parked near the boarded-up antique store, and stared at the building that had once been Ethan's apartment. The upstairs windows were dark, yet one of them glowed faintly, as if a candle burned behind the curtains. When she knocked on the bookstore door, Walter answered. Older now, face drawn and pale. "You shouldn't dig into that," he warned. "Some stories don't want to be remembered." Clara smiled politely. "That's what makes them good." Walter sighed. "Then at least, keep the lights on." That night, Clara checked into the Pines Inn. Room 12 had been reopened, freshly painted. A new mirror hung over the sink, spotless and clear. She unpacked her recording gear, pressed record, and began narrating. "They say a young man vanished here after seeing a woman smile in the dark. But no one ever proved it. Maybe it was madness. Maybe something older." The ceiling bulb buzzed softly. The air smelled faintly of iron and mildew. She continued speaking, but the microphone hissed with interference. Her headphones crackled. Beneath her own voice, she heard another. A faint whisper repeating her words seconds after she said them, almost like an echo with a heartbeat. She stopped recording and replayed it. In the background, a voice murmured, "Turn it off." Clara frowned. She unplugged the mic, checked the wiring. Everything looked fine. She laughed nervously and grabbed her phone to call her producer. But when the screen lit up, her reflection in the black glass didn't match her movement. Her reflected self smiled first. She froze. Slowly, she lowered the phone. The reflection blinked, tilted its head, and whispered something she couldn't hear. Then the bulb above her flickered. Off. On. Off again. When the light finally stayed off, she saw it. A faint, glowing grin suspended in the dark, inches from her face. The scream never reached the hallway. By morning, the motel clerk found room 12 empty again. Clara's equipment was still running. On the recording, there was only static, and a quiet female laugh at the end, followed by a whisper. She smiled after I turned off the lights. The podcast episode uploaded itself that night. No one knew how. It appeared automatically on every platform under the title, The Smile That Never Fades. Listeners described strange things. Their screens flickered. Their webcam showed a woman standing behind them. Their lights would turn off on their own just before the final minute played. One user claimed that if you paused the episode at 6 minutes and 13 seconds, you could see her reflection smiling back through the waveform graphic. The comment section filled with panic. Some begged others not to listen. Others swore it was fake until their power went out mid-sentence. In the weeks that followed, reports spread. A boy in Manchester heard the recording through his headphones. His mother found him catatonic, whispering she was in the mirror. A woman in Chicago claimed her smart lights began turning off every night at 3 a.m. A truck driver in Devon saw a pale woman's grin reflected in his windshield. Before crashing into a ditch, police dismissed it as mass hysteria, but the maintenance crew who removed the motel's mirror quit after one night. They said the glass whispered when touched, like something breathing inside it. Now, every Halloween, the recording resurfaces online. No one knows who uploads it. The audio file carries no metadata, no origin. The thumbnail is always the same. A dark room, and in the faint glow, a woman's silhouette smiling. Some people say if you listen to it all the way through and then turn off the lights, she'll appear behind you. Others say she doesn't need you to turn them off anymore. She finds her own way in. And if you look closely at any mirror afterward, bathroom, phone, or window, you might see a faint outline just behind your shoulder. Her mouth opens wider. Her eyes hollow out, and she waits. In a quiet apartment somewhere in Boston, above a dusty old bookstore, a single light bulb hangs by a wire. It hasn't been switched off in years, but sometimes, late at night when the wind passes through the cracked walls, the bulb flickers twice, and if you're standing in the street below, you'll see it. A face pressed against the glass, pale, grinning. She's still smiling and she never stops.